But there is always so much more, and we must do all we can to meet the critical needs of our defenders. Join the Gary Sinise Foundation family as we show the pride and gratitude of our nation to all its heroes and the families that stand by their sides. While we can never do enough for our defenders, veterans, first responders, and the loved ones who sacrifice right alongside them, thank you. You guys are awesome. We can always do a little more. Help serve our nation's defenders and their loved ones now. The Gary Sinise Foundation.
It says it's on, but I bet everybody in the back can hear me. I used to be a quarterback, yeah, see, you got it. We'll make the play call, it's all good. One housekeeping.
It works.
One housekeeping item.
Operator error.
I'm not going to touch anything. All right, that's good. We're good to go. Yeah, so anyway, one housekeeping item. There is somebody that left a purse in the black box. Larry Dozier, I know it's not you. Okay. Mike, I know the owner of the purse, and I'll make sure it gets to the right person. So let's get started. I'm Russ Laney, the president of Home Field Advantage, and welcome to Celebration of Service 2019 and the kickoff event for the Cy John Service Award weekend. We are so excited for what's going to happen in the next day and a half. For those of you that are not familiar with Home Field Advantage, we are an event production company that does events that celebrate America. We believe that we as a country are losing our home field advantage because we're so divided. And we're trying to come up with ways to shrink that division. We got to find something to rally around, and we happen to think that that rallying point is service, which we define as helping others to be better. And quite honestly, when you think about the folks that are with us tonight, it's all about service, Cy John, and Sinise. If we learn about the legacies of Lance Cy John and the legacy that's in the process of being built by Gary Sinise, we would be better off as a country. There's no doubt about it. So first I want to pass on sentiments from Coach Fisher DeBerry, who's been a key player in Home Field Advantage and Celebration of Service. He is unable to make it this weekend, but wanted to make sure that you all knew that he wanted to be here and cares about this weekend deeply, because he did a pretty good job of whipping Army when he was the head football coach in that Air Force. So the other thing that you're going to be pleased with about Coach DeBerry, and he reminded me that I am a miracle comedian. And that means if I say anything funny, it'll be a miracle. So with that, let's jump into the more formal part of our program. And I'm going to introduce to you a young man that I helped train. He was a dually when I was a firstie, and just a great guy. We've known each other since 1975. Had a great career, retired as a 4-star, and continues to serve as the CEO of the Gary Sinise Foundation, General Retired Robin Rand. As a young man, obviously I'm not Gary Sinise, and on behalf of Gary Sinise, I apologize for him not being here, because there's no place he'd rather be tonight than here in Colorado Springs, despite the cold. Hey, Posse, how are you? He wanted to be here. Let me tell you what happened. He lives in Southern California near the Ronald Reagan Library, and they had to emergency evac out of their house on Wednesday. And when they got back yesterday, they had to evac again, and in addition, his adult son, Matt, had to be hospitalized for an illness. So Gary, unfortunately, couldn't be here, and he sends his regrets. So I'm a bad fill-in for him, but we have some folks from the foundation with us, and I just asked them quickly to stand. Ray Sands, who runs our chapters, Fran Black, Kristen Carter, who is our Gary's personal assistant, and my lovely wife, Kim, who is one of our ambassadors for the foundation. I wish you could meet Gary. lot of you maybe don't know him as Gary Sinise, you know him as Lieutenant Dan, right? By the way, 25 years ago, Forrest Gump was done. But Gary has committed his entire adult life to our veterans, our defenders as we call them, veterans, active duty, anyone who has served, our first responders, police, firefighters, EMT, and their families. And 8 years ago, he started the Gary Sinise Foundation, and you saw some of the wonderful, noble things that this foundation does. So there's no one better to get the service award named after Lance Sargent than Gary Sinise, in my humble opinion. But he is kind of with us tonight. So could we just run a short hello from Gary?
Good evening. I'm Gary Sinise, and I apologize so much for not being able to be there tonight to receive the Lance Sargent Award. We've had a lot going on here in California. Right over my shoulder here, you can see smoke. It's the fire that's going on in Santa Paula right now. It broke out last night. The day before, we had to evacuate. We had fire across the other way on the other side of the house, so they evacuated us, and it's been a bit crazy here. We've got family challenges and things that are just unfortunately going to prohibit me from being there. But I wanted you to know how deeply grateful I am to Janine and Russell and my dear friend Robin Rand for honoring me with this prestigious award from the Air Force. Lance Sargent obviously was a great, great American, inspirational American for what he went through, and he inspires me so much at this moment with some of the challenges that our family is facing right now, and personally trying to carry the load here, taking care of so many difficult things right now. But I look at what he went through and the difficulty and the challenges and everything that he faced, and the way he faced it with such courage and strength and determination and will. And he inspires me so much. It's a great privilege to receive this award in his name, and I thank everyone for that. I wanted to read a little something that also inspires me. I am an American airman. I am a warrior. I have answered my nation's call. I am an American airman. My mission is to fly, fight, and win. I am faithful to a proud heritage, a tradition of honor, and a legacy of valor. I am an American airman, guardian of freedom and justice, my nation's sword and shield, its sentry and avenger. I defend my country with my life. I am an American airman, wingman, leader, warrior. I will never leave an airman behind. I will never falter. I will not fail. This inspires me so much right now as we face these difficult challenges that are the reason for my not being able to come today. And I think of this Airman's Creed. I will never falter, and I will not fail. Thank you for honoring me with this prestigious award in the name of a great, great American hero, Medal of Honor recipient, Lance Sargent. I wish I could be there with you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Before I bring Janine up here, if I could, I think it's only fitting. We just heard from a great American hero. But we're really here tonight to learn about another great American who served in a really difficult time in our Air Force and our nation. so I'm going to take the liberty to ask if there are any Vietnam veterans in the room. Please stand up. Be recognized. Fellas, welcome home. On May 31st, 1976, I had just completed what we then called Hell Week. You duelies will find out about that here in a while. And we also called it June Week back then. It was the commencement of graduation week. And a few of my classmates that are with me tonight, Ray and Denny and a few others will remember this. We all filed out onto the terrazzo. Back then we had two dorms. Vandenberg Hall, that was referred to affectionately as the old dorm. And a few years later they built a new dorm, but they never named it. It was called the new dorm. May 31st, Memorial Day of 1976, we were in our parade whites. Monday morning, clear blue skies. Class of 76 was 2 days from graduating. We had a commencement, a ceremony, and we recognized and named the new dorm, Sargent Hall. And while I had read about Lance Sargent as a rookie, it didn't mean as much to me as it should have. From that day forward, I spent 4 years of my entire cadet career, 4 years, not 5, or 6, 4, all of them were in Sargent Hall. And as I continued to serve for the next 39 years, the name Sargent is special. He is our only Air Force Academy graduate Medal of Honor recipient. And you're going to hear from his sister, and you're going to watch a documentary that will do several things to you tonight. And I bet you're going to leave here changed. Freedom isn't free game. The blood, sweat, and tears of men remains beside you. Pay for our freedom.
Thank you so much. It is so good to be back in Colorado Springs in the Air Force Academy, and my favorite people to speak to in the whole world are the Air Force Academy cadets. Can you raise your hands? Let me see where you are. Because I continue to be inspired by you. You are one of the reasons that I dedicated 10 years of my life to this documentary. You are one of the reasons that I wanted to paint a broader brushstroke of who Lance is and who Lance was. He was one of yours. He walked the TISO just like you do. He faced many challenges as you do, and in small, medium, and large ways, throughout all of our lives, we've all had to make those decisions. To build a foundation, to take us into a future that we were unsure of. And so that if we bring our best every time, we will prepare ourselves in the best way we can to expand to our greatest potential. It became clear to me decades ago as I represented Lance and our family did, that I needed to engage in raising awareness to who he was as he grew up. I hear all the time, how did he do what he did? Well, of course, that would be conjecture on my part, but I can tell you he grew up in a loving family. I can tell you he had a sister 12 years younger that adored him. And I can tell you that I experienced some of that Air Force Academy experience with him as I came out to see him on the first dually year when they were not allowed to go home at Christmas, and then again at graduation. And so I bring this story to you to introduce him to you at the beginning of the film as an artist. He was a painter and a sculptor and a photographer and a vocalist and a musician. And I want you to see that part of him too. Because that's who he was all the way through up to November 9th, 1967. He had a brilliant life. And in particular, I want you cadets to understand what you have in common with him, not what separates you. You have to understand that the chatter of the mind that will take you to places like, I want to give up, I can't do this, I'm alone. Lance faced those too. For the 46 days that he was in the jungle by himself, crawling backward, he faced that same chatter. And we all do. And if we continue to live here, that will drive us to do the things that will not allow us to expand our greatest potential. But if we live from our heart, if the story is a love story, like this one, that happens to take place in a time of war, then you will begin to understand the message that I am trying to bring to all of you. This is a love story. This is a young man that lived from his heart. So I invite you to be very intentional about why you are here. Why are you here today? And what will you experience that will bring you to emotional challenges that you're facing? And maybe you'll look at them a little differently after you hear Lance's story. Many of you know why he's recognized for the last 3 months of his life, and justifiably so. But I want you to see the other side of it too. Because if we end Lance's life on January 22nd, 1968, it's a tragic story indeed. But if we don't, each of us has an opportunity to light the path for those who follow us, each of us in our own unique way. I chose to tell this story in a non-linear format, so we're going to jump back and forth in different parts of his life, and you will be cued in by a date. So at this time, I'm going to ask you to turn off your cell phones. Make sure that you settle back into where you are at this moment. Be right here with us right now, in this community, in this spirit of folks, that we are going to learn a little something about Lance, and probably more about ourselves. So please join me in watching Side Jump. He hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. I think a lot of you know a little something about that. I find it interesting that in Lance's words, he wrote a humanities paper, and it was entitled The Quest for Freedom. And that's what his sculpture was based on. Arm outstretched, reaching for the skies, reaching for freedom. In the carnage of war, the grace of God emerges. I think there was divine intervention in that 46 days in the jungle. I think those concentric circles that continue out of all of our lives are meant to touch those that go after us. I think the wisdom of the ages is in all of us. It's in our cellular makeup. Our ancestors and their ancestors and all that came before us. You can see that Lance was challenged often in academics, cadets. Don't let that get you down. I have the letter from the Commandant from the first semester. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Saijan, we are very concerned about your son, Lance. He currently has a .8 grade-point average. I always say it's one measure of the man. Some of you got that one? It's vitally important because someday somebody might have the first introduction to you with that piece of paper, but it is only one measure. I want you to consider this. There was a moment in Lance's life that he knew the cavalry wasn't coming. And for some that would mean defeat. But for others, like my brother Lance, he leaned into that challenge and turned it into rocket fuel. You accept those challenges and turn it into rocket fuel. Receive them as gifts, because you will meet yourself. Lance showed us what it meant to be truly free in the face of his captors. He never lost faith in his God, his country, his comrades, and his family. Ironically, he was always free, because freedom lives in the heart, not in the head. I wanted to take this broader brushstroke to allow you to see the other parts of Lance's life that were brilliant and wonderful and that he embraced. He embraced the fact that he was a very handsome, charming young man. So when he was the photographer and he went out to get the photos for the yearbook or the newspaper, my mom said, "I'm the photographer, I want to take your photo." His friend said, he added, "and I'm probably going to need your phone number." So he had lots of fun too. Is there anybody that has a question? Oh, I want to say something. I have to look around here first. You saw somebody in this film, and he represents so many of the individuals that tried to get Lance out that day. The bravery and the courage of them, because they were getting shot up. And there was one man that spoke to Lance first, and he's here today. Jim Mack, would you stand up and would you give him some love? Where are you, Jim? Good God, I love you, Jim. Is there anybody that wants to ask a question? Is there any cadet that has a question? There's all kinds of lore about Lance. He was on academic probation, but there were other kinds of probation too, conduct, right? And yes, he was caught in a car after hours with a girl. They always ask me, is it true that he drove his motorcycle in Vigil Hall? No, I think it was his Corvette. During an inspection for the 21st Squadron, morale was kind of low, and so he thought he wanted to raise the spirits of the 21st Squadron, so what he did was he fed a little piece of thread through a button, and then he wound up the thread, long thread behind the button, so just a little piece came out. And so during inspection, side job, they took that thread and they pulled it, and pulled it, and pulled it, and pulled it. So he had a sense of humor too. He was wonderful. You know, for me, of course, it's the perspective of an adoring younger sister. 12 years apart, and so there was never civil rivalry, and there was never competition. There was just pure love. I talk about this film as a love story. It is. You don't do those kinds of things without the drive of love and living from the heart. The man that we've given the Cy John Service Award to, Gary Sinise, lives from the heart too. And he doesn't necessarily need to be recognized for what he does. You can see he's a humble guy. I wish he was here, but I wouldn't want him anyplace else. He's telling us again how important family is. We recognized him. He doesn't need that recognition. That's not why he does it. So thank you, Robin, and the staff for representing Gary. We send him our love, for sure, and his family. Anybody have a story? Any graduates that graduated with Lance? Who else? Bart. Bart, I'm going to tell you something. Your cameo appearance in that film. Did you see you cutting the graduation cake at the very end of the credits? So you were at your sponsor home. And that was Bart. Bart and Lance were good friends. I'm going to tell you something, Bart. I'm going to remind you of something. There were two names that Lance said as he was in the prison cell. He said to Guy, "Was Bart Holliday just here? Do you know that? He called for you, and he called for his dad." Can you imagine when my dad heard that? Any questions, cadets? Anything? Anybody? Well, thank you for being here with us today. We've formed a new community of spirit and soul and hearts. And cadets, I would strongly advise you to seek out the wisdom of some of your elders sitting right here. They got a little something to tell you. You just got to ask them a couple questions and ask them some things. Yes, go ahead. Will this be on sale? In other words, this is going to be distributed. So everybody always talks about how will you distribute this film. And so part of, it took me 10 years to do this film and there wasn't any funding. And so there's criteria that you have to meet in order to continue to distribute that film, and some of it's called usage rights. And that would be an increased amount of money that I would need for it, as well as contractual agreements to release it. So if you go to broadcast or you put it out to DVD, there's a lot of other criteria that you have to meet. So right now, the answer is probably no at this immediate time. But we'll come back. We'll find you. Anybody else? Who is that? Hi, Larry. I'm good, how are you? Thank you. Greg Wallace has it. So let me tell you a quick story about that. A man came into my studio, I think it was 2015, and he said, "We're going to have a car show, and we want to honor your brother." And I said, "Well, that's wonderful." And I said, "Would you like a photo of him in his Corvette?" He said, "Oh, we would love that. That would be so great." And I said, "You know, I also have a whole bunch of papers." So the other thing, too, is my parents saved everything. I have the original receipt of Lance purchasing the car in Colorado Springs at Daniels Motors. Is that still here? Daniels Motors. Daniels Chevrolet. And so it's a little tiny piece of paper, and it was $4,216, 1965 Corvette. And then he went to St. Louis to pick it up off the line and drove it home. So in 2015, there was a car show. The individual walked in, "Yes, I'd love a photo." I said, "I also have the original sales slip. Would you like that?" And I said, "I have the VIN number." I said, "I tried to find that car myself in 1972, because remember, the war was over in 73. In 72, as an 18-year-old optimistic girl, I thought, he's coming home, and I'm going to find that car. I'm going to buy that for him, so when he comes home, he has it." So I found the VIN number, and I searched for it, and it was still in Wisconsin, and I went out and tried to buy that car, and it was sitting in a barn, and the guy wouldn't sell it to me. Now we're going to fast forward to 2015, an individual, we want to have a car show, we want to honor your brother. "Do you still have that VIN number?" "I do." He said, "I'm an ex-cop. I can find anything." 2015, last time I saw it was 1972. He calls me the next day, "I found the car." I said, "What?" He said, "Yes." It had made its way to California. It had been there for something like 30 years. It had just made its way back to Wisconsin a year prior, or we wouldn't have been able to find it because now it was in state records. And the man that owns it wants to meet you. And I said, "You are kidding me." So we filmed, actually you saw that truly was the reveal for finding that car. And so I will tell you this too. Lance had to sell that car in 1967 when he had gone over to Vietnam. And so he's encouraging us different ways to sell it. And I think we sold it for, ended up like $2,200 or something. And Lance said, "When I come home, I'm going to get another car. It's going to be a Jaguar XKE Silver." Oh, wow, that's cool. So we go to the reveal to Greg Lawless. He opens the garage door and there I see the Corvette, and of course I'm, just so emotional about it. And so he had put $100,000 into that car to restore. And he had kept a couple of original touch points, which was the steering wheel and the gear shift. And he let me, sit in it, and we drove it around a little bit. He was a collector of cars, and he said, "Would you like to see some of my other cars?" I said, "I would." And so we went down to the next garage. He opened the door. It was a silver Jaguar XK, as God is my witness. Anybody else? Yes.
Janine, you told me the story of Lance's class ring last year. Would you feel comfortable sharing that story?
Sure.
Beautiful.
Sure. So I wear this on special occasions. This is indeed Lance's class ring. In 1985, my parents received via U.S. mail a little tiny letter, handwritten letter with stationery that said Bangkok Hotel. It said, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Sargon, my name is Lynn Standerwick. You don't know me, but I have been seeking out information about POWs and MIAs in Laos. We went over there. I met with a Laotian official, and they came forward with what they said they thought was your son's class ring. 1985. And so down in 67. A representative will be coming to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to bring that to you. Stand by for him to connect with you." So months go by. And he finally calls my parents and said, "If you'd like to come and get his ring, here's the address." It's in Milwaukee. So my parents indeed went there. It was kind of an interesting part of Milwaukee, a little city part of Milwaukee. And they went up, and there were the World War II homes, boom, 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 boom. They all looked the same, and they were pretty disheveled, and the front door was all kind of barricaded and boarded up. So they went to the back door. And they knocked on the door, and a Laotian woman came to the back door, and she opened the door, and she motioned them in, didn't speak any English. And they walked in, and there was a Formica kitchen table and a little vinyl chair. And they walked past that and went into the next room, which looked like to be sort of the living room. And then there was an open door to what was a bedroom. And there were Laotian women sitting on the floor plucking chickens. And there was nothing in the house except that table and chair. So shortly after that, they brought out an individual and had him sit at the kitchen table, his back towards my parents. They fed him breakfast. They took the dishes away. It was about 2 hours that my parents were standing. So they finally brought my parents in front of him, and he pulled out this ring. Now, remember I said we had so many documents on Lance? This was divine intervention and a story meant to be told. Before my mom had gone to that home, she had gone back to the records and pulled Lance's original class ring order form. His handwriting. And it was a size 9. She could determine what the stone looked like. She could determine what the inscription was inside. And she could determine what the design pattern was on the ring. So she knew when she saw it, she would recognize it. So indeed, he pulled it out and he showed it to them. She started to take it. He took it back. He said, "You can have it for $5,000. So my father reached for his checkbook in his coat pocket. And my beautiful mother, did you see her? She was a cross between Jackie Kennedy and Grace Kelly. She's just stunning. And never contradicted my dad. I never heard a crossword between them. Can you imagine that? They were married 70 years. And so she gently took her hand and she put down his arm and said, "We will not pay for our son's class ring." And they walked out the door. So she went home, my little diminutive mom. And back in 1985, she pulled out 2 pieces of paper because she had to put a carbon between the 2 so that she could have a copy, because we had a copy of everything. And she sat down and she began to write, "Dear President Reagan." That little mom of mine. I have that letter. I have it in the file my parents kept called The Ring. I have all the documents in there. And so, "Dear President Reagan," and she went on to tell them what had happened. So about 3 days later, they got a phone call from representatives at the White House, and they said, we are going to be gathering information, and we're going to go get that ring for you. And by golly, they did. And they brought it home with a police escort and gave it to my parents. And this is it. They know this story, and I've had kids come up to me and said, ma'am, can I have a virtual fist pump with Captain Saigon? And so we do. So that's why I said this was meant to be told. This was not meant to be a secret. This was meant to be shared with all of you. So like I said, you might know more about Lance today, but you're going to find some things out about yourself too. To Gary, and Robin, if you would receive this for him, we'd be so very grateful.
So we believe in a thing called God-incidence versus coincidence. And if this young lady hadn't sat next to Larry Dozier in Notre Dame Stadium last time the Falcons went out to play the Fighting Irish, we would not be together, and here we are 5 years later, fighting the good fight to extend the legacy of Lance Peter Saigon and continue to build on the legacy of Gary Sinise and the Gary Sinise Foundation. So for long-time Falcon fans, you know it. We used to be a Reebok school. We're now a Nike school. You see the swoosh, but we were a Reebok school. And our account rep was a young man by the name of Pete Simons. And Pete and I have remained in contact, and he took a job after Reebok kind of flittered away with College Town. And he was in town and he said, you've got to meet my boss. Steve Hare is one of the great guys going. And we had lunch together. Steve, would you please come up? I want to share, this is the artist that did this painting of Gary. And when we told Stephen about the Saigon Service Award and what our plans were for this year, he said, I'm going to do a painting and I'm going to donate it. I'm going to give it to Gary. And this is the result. And if, Steve, you want to present it to General Rand, that would be a great thing.
General Rand, one of the things I wanted to say is that I've got a strong connection to this painting, and I will for a long time. The story of Lance and his journey, his sacrifices, to the story of Gary is so beautifully told. If you haven't read his book, Grateful American, I highly recommend it. Just a deep appreciation for everything that he and your foundation, your team here have done for our troops and our first responders. This thing really kind of came full circle when I completed this painting on the morning of 9/11. And I just sat there with it. I shared this with Russ. And I thought of all the things that had to happen from the time that I started this, not by design. So let me rephrase that, not by my design. That on that morning I would finish that painting, connecting these two guys, these two great Americans. So congratulations to them.
When we got word late yesterday that Gary was not going to be able to be with us, it quickly became, Gary has been here to support us for a long, long time. Let's make this weekend where we show Gary our support. Okay? One way to do it, unfortunately, or fortunately, the breakfast is sold out. But let's make our way to Falcon Stadium. That truly is going to be a celebration of service. Both sidelines are going to be filled with young men that are going to serve their country. There's no better picture of service. You look out on that field, 11 on each side of the line of scrimmage. It's all about service, and football in America is a celebration. I do know that there are still tickets to that game. You can show up tomorrow. Let's bring the fountains home with a victory, but we're going to hand the microphone to General Rand to bring us home.
Give her a round of applause. Russ, thank you, Russ and Janine, for doing this. So, sir, this is beautiful. When you need to know that Gary has committed his adult life to us, but the most profound moment in his life was 90. And since that day, everything he does, he says, I'm just an actor, but I act now so that I can do things for defenders and their families. Gary happens to be a pretty decent bass player. And he had a little more than a garage band going. And when 9/11 happened afterwards, he said, I need to take whatever gifts I have and try to do something with these gifts. One of the things he did is he put together a band. And he said, I want to take my band overseas. I want to do it, go visit airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines. So he called the USO. No one answered. They go, this is the USO, leave a message. He goes, yes, this is Mr. Gary Sinise. I'd like someone to contact me because I have a band. I'd like to go give my band and our time to our warriors. No answer. Calls the next day. This is Mr. Gary Sinise. Leaves the same exact message. Nothing. A little frustrated. Third time he calls, hey, this is Lieutenant Dan. I want to take my band to the USO. Guess who they called? 20 minutes later, the phone. 480 concerts later. That's the Gary that we all know, Hunters. And he does it for his way of saying thank you. And the band really is good. It's about his way of giving back. And so I can say this on behalf, and I was one of those recipients. His first USO overseas tour was the Kunsan Air Base Parade in 2004 when I was the wolf over Kunsan Air Base. And I saw how he lightened the burden that we all had as we were serving away from our families. And he does that week after week, day after day, month after month, you name it, in so many ways. And so if Gary were here right now, this is what he'd say. Hey, I'm just an actor. Thank you for your service.
Foundation says we can never do enough, but we can always do a little bit more. Reflect on how we can all do a little bit more. Thank you so much. Drive home safely.
Better than those other ones.
Yeah, they're just plastic.
So just be glad I grabbed these. Yeah.
I don't know if something like shifting back and forth. There you go.
disc to the DVD. I tried to find Blu-ray. The school that had Blu-ray players. Oh no. He went out and he actually brought his from home when he played it on. Well, he did go to buy one, and Best Buy has the Institute of New Policies tax exempt. You have to register online and tax exempt. And he was calling me. He asked me what he should do. And well, give you the registration. You can't just go to a different vendor. So he couldn't. So he went to Walmart. The same thing happened.
Like Costco.
Well, they probably didn't have a card. You have to have a school business account. Costco.
Awesome, huh? Awesome. Oh my gosh, my pleasure. So, my jacket.
Whoever you were sitting with.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was standing over there because I didn't want to come back in, but I had like driven down from Denver this afternoon. I had not been in the bathroom since 3:30. I'm like, I'm gonna pop. I've got to go.
I made the pathway for you.
I'm like, I gotta pop. I gotta go. So it was awesome. So it was good to see you again.
Nice to see you
Thanks,
too.
Peggy. Take care.
Thanks.
What'd you think? She goes, I'm so
of the award to Mr. Gary Sinise. Just real quickly, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we got here this morning. Home field advantage, we believe that our country is losing its home field advantage because we're so divided. And we're trying to find ways to shrink that division, something that we can rally around. And we happen to think that that rallying point is service, helping others to be better. That's how celebration and service came to be known. We needed an icon to really remind people about service, their commitment to helping others, and there's no better icon than Lance Sidejohn, thus the Sidejohn Service Award. So I am going to turn the microphone now over to the CEO of the Gary Sinise Foundation. This weekend has now evolved to be Service, Sidejohn, and Sinise. The CEO of the Gary Sinise Foundation, Class of '79, General Robin Rand.
And home field advantage. Of course, we would need to thank Janine Sidejohn, and she'll talk later, and we're so honored to be with you today, Janine. The Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, Dave Goldfein, and his beautiful wife, Don, thank you, sir, for, I know Corona is absolutely crazy, and that you would squeeze us in, means so much to Gary. Same to the Wilsons, Steve Wilson and Nancy, our Vice Chief. My dear friend, Mike Holmes, the Commander of Air Combat Command, is here with us. Mike, thank you, brother. And he knows Gary, and certainly the Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. Chief Wright, sir, thank you for joining us tonight. It means so much that you guys are all here. To the Academy, Jay's not with us, but Michelle Edmondson is. Again, crazy, crazy week, and thank you, Michelle, you're a trooper. Where are you? I saw you earlier. There she is. Thank you. But to all of you, thanks for taking the time. Obviously, I'm not Gary Sinise, and sadly, Gary couldn't be here, and you'll see here in a minute why. But I did speak with him this morning, and he sends along his gratitude and thanks for your prayers and support. Janine, you know, as you and I have discussed, as a USAFA graduate from the class of 1979, I have the honor to be one of 4,000 cadets standing in formation on the Terrazzo on 31 May 1976. It was Memorial Day. We called it Gin Week back then. I had just been recognized and welcomed in as a full member of the cadet wing. When the new dorm, as we called it, was dedicated and named after your brother, Sergeant Hall. From that moment on, like many of my classmates that are with us today, I developed a deeply rooted respect for your brother, our Academy's only Medal of Honor recipient. While learning our history can make us smarter, understanding our heritage will make us prouder. Lance was many things. He was a beloved son, a brother, friend, fighter pilot. He was a warrior, and no doubt, he was a true American hero. Hence, I'm deeply honored to have attended the same institution that Lance attended, commanded one of the organizations that Lance flew in, and served for over 40 years in the United States Air Force that Lance served in. Thank you, Janine, for your tireless efforts to ensure his legacy lives on. I want to thank you. Appropriate as we honor Lance and Gary today, that we honor those men and women who went into a place, a dark place, in a dark time in our history. Would all Vietnam veterans please stand and be recognized for their incredible service to our nation. Vietnam veterans are so near and dear to Gary. With this as a backdrop, I cannot think of a more deserving recipient for the Sergeant Service Award than my friend, Mr. Gary Sinise. As the young founder of a theater called Steppenwolf in Chicago, in the early 1970s, Gary met a beautiful lady actress named Moira Harris, who introduced him to her brother, Captain Mac Harris, a 1966 West Point graduate, Vietnam veteran, and a Silver Star recipient. This meeting turned out to be transformational. Gary went on to marry Moira, and the impact that Mac Harris had on Gary's life changed his outlook. Since that time, Mr. Gary Sinise has turned his unconditional support to the men and women who serve us in the harshest of conditions and circumstances. I first met Gary in 2004 at Kunsan Air Base, Korea. In the years that have followed, my wife Kim and I have had the opportunity to be with Gary through some of the best of personal times and some of the most difficult but sacred times. No doubt, Gary made his mark as an actor, director, producer, and many know him for his hit movies, television shows, his Emmy, his Golden Globe, and his Oscar nomination. But to those of us who wear or wore our nation's cloth, Gary is known for his selfless devotion to our nation's defenders. Hence, today I represent the thousands of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, first responders, and their amazing families who know Gary for his commitment to supporting their sons and daughters who defend and protect our country's way of life. To us, we know Gary for the 485 Lieutenant Dan Band concerts on bases and hospitals around the globe that he and his band have performed, or the way he and the Gary Sinise Foundation supports, organize, and then fly our greatest generation of veterans to the New Orleans World War II Museum. We know him for hosting thousands of children and surviving parents of fallen military heroes at Disney World in Orlando each December. We know him for his countless visits to hospitals in the combat zone or here in the United States, where he will simply hold the hand of one of our wounded heroes. We know Gary for the way he has raised funds and found contractors to build state-of-the-art homes for our nation's most severely wounded veterans and first responders. Through it all, Gary has been our fundraiser, our campaigner, our supporter, our advocate, and our ally. And he is always there for us, no matter where we are. He has personally served me Thanksgiving meals in the combat zone. And I have been with him when he paid sacred tribute to our fallen heroes at their grave sites. We all know him, not just because we have seen him in movies, TV shows, but because we have seen him in person when the directors aren't shouting orders and the cameras aren't rolling. Like Lance Seidgen demonstrated, Gary doesn't quit. He just is there for us, quietly and without fanfare. Family is important to Gary. And I know he couldn't do what he does without the steadfast support of his family. Hence why he isn't with us right now, because his family needed him more. But let there be no doubt, Gary can't do this without the amazing support of Moira, his amazing daughters, Ella and Sophie, son Mac, son-in-laws Bobby and Cam, and young granddaughters Moira and Millie. Thank you to the Sinise family. You are in our thoughts and prayers during this very, very difficult time. There are many famous actors and performers who have entertained generations of citizens around the world. And I don't know a single one of them. But I know Gary Sinise. Allow me to suggest that few, if any, of these stars can hold a candle to Gary, because he represents more than film and television. Gary, I'm talking to you right now. You are a true patriot. You are a humble servant, and you are a valued friend. To American defenders who serve in ill-forgotten places, you have a legacy of service and a legacy of love. Let me close with a quote from President Lincoln that captures Gary Sinise's greatness far better than any words that I have. At a time when our nation was engaged in a very bitter struggle, President Lincoln said, "Honor to the soldier and sailor everywhere who bravely bears his country's cause, but honor also to the citizen who cares for his brothers in the field and serves the best he can, the same cause for the common good." Gary, congratulations on receiving this prestigious Seidgen Service Award. More importantly, thank you for being the remarkable citizen who continues to serve for the common good. Kim and I are honored to be two of your friends, and we will be on your wing anytime and anywhere. I have to imagine that Lance P. Seidgen is looking down on us with great satisfaction that his legacy of service and sacrifice is being honored through someone like Gary Sinise, who deflects credit by often saying this, "Hey, I'm just an actor." Thanks to all of you for your service. No, Gary, you are more than just an actor, my friend. You are a protector, and as you like to say, you are our pal. God bless you, brother, and thank God we have had men like you and Lance Peter Seidgen, who showed us what right looks like. Oh yeah, Beat Army! Now we get to hear from the other star today, Janine Seidgen.
So much. It's my privilege to be here with you all this morning. One of my favorite destinations in the whole world is the Air Force Academy. I stand before you as the adoring sister of Captain Lance Seidgen. Lance was 12 years my senior and became my father figure and my greatest mentor. Indeed, Lance received the Medal of Honor on March 4th, 1976. It was given posthumously to my parents, Jane and Sil Seidgen, by President Ford. And this is why he received it. On November 9th, 1967, 25-year-old Lance Seidgen crawled in the back seat of his F-4 Phantom jet. He was on a routine mission that was going to take him to the Vandenborg Ford to take a bridge out. When they reached the target, they released the ordnance, and there was a problem with the ordnance. It prematurely exploded and engulfed Lance's aircraft. Lance was able to eject and plummeted through the sky, through the triple rainforest below, landing on the limestone karst. When he regained consciousness, he assessed his injuries, and they included a mangled right hand, a concussion, and a double compound fracture to the left leg, 4 inches below the knee, both bones snapped off sharp, protruding through the skin. A rescue attempt was made as they sent the penetrator down to get Lance, and they were going to send the parajumper down too. He said, "Negative, I'm surrounded by the enemy. I'll crawl to you." For 33 minutes, the aircraft hovered, and they were unable to get Lance. So they had to call off the mission and leave. The next day, they went back to try and find Lance, and no beepers were heard and no voice contact was made. What happened was Lance fell into a cave and fell onto his radio and drained the radio. As he proceeded to move forward for the next 46 days, dragging himself backward through the jungle, no food and no water. On the 46th day, he lost consciousness on a road and was picked up by the enemy. 6'2", 220-pound Lance Saigon was now diminished to 60 pounds, and only 20% of the flesh remained on his body. He was taken to a temporary holding camp. In that condition, he motioned the guard down and knocked him out. Lance rolled off the table and climbed back out into the jungle. A village was sent out to find him, and 4 hours later they did. And that's when the torture and the interrogation began, to which his reply was, "Name, rank, and serial number." And when pressed further, he said, "I can't give you that. It's against the code." With that, they transported him to the Hanoi prison camp, and 4 weeks later, he succumbed to pneumonia and the injuries he sustained in the jungle. On January 22nd, 1968, Lance went home. If we end the story there, it's very tragic indeed. But if we don't, if we understand that each of us has an opportunity to light the path for those who follow us, therefore contributing to the greater cause. So many times as I go out and I represent Lance and his legacy, those come to tell me that when they came to understand the life and legacy of Lance, and they were faced with their own challenge, they said to themselves, if he could do that, then I can do this. Whatever your this is. Mark Twain said there are 2 very important days in your life. The day you were born and the day you find out why. I know why Lance was born. I know the concentric circles that continue to radiate out from him touch us today. 50 years later, we talk about that young man. For many, it is overwhelming to consider that we would compare our life to that of the life and legacy and character of Lance Saigon. It may seem too dramatic or too heroic. And we find ourselves trying to find a path to connect our life to what Lance did. How can we achieve and how can we make those decisions? I can assure you that that path exists. Not only can we connect to Lance, but we can connect to those very same principles and punctuate that in our life, to fold into our life those same choices he made based on integrity, honor, and love. That path is the spirit of serving. I can't think of a better recipient than this year's recipient. This man, too, has chosen a path of service. He has dedicated his adult life in ways that most of us can't even imagine. I am proud to present the recipient of the Saigon Service Award for 2019, which is Gary Sinise. As you know, Gary can't be with us today physically, but energetically, I can assure you he's there.
They will be there tonight to receive the Lance Saigon Award. We've had a lot going on here in California, right over my shoulder here, you can see smoke. It's the fire that's going on in Santa Paula right now. It broke out last night. The day before, we had to evacuate. We had fire across the other way on the other side of the house, so they evacuated us. And it's been a bit crazy here. We've got family challenges and things that are just unfortunately going to prohibit me from being here. But I wanted you to know how deeply grateful I am to Janine and Russell and my dear friend Robin Rand for honoring me with this prestigious award from the Air Force. Lance Sijan obviously was a great, great American, inspirational American for what he went through, and he inspires me so much at this moment with some of the challenges that our family is facing right now, and personally trying to carry the load here, taking care of so many difficult things right now. But I look at what he went through and the difficulty and the challenges and everything that he faced, and the way he faced it with such courage and strength and determination and will. He inspires me so much. It's a great privilege to receive this award in his name, and I thank everyone for that. I wanted to read a little something that also inspires me. I am an American airman. I am a warrior. I've answered my nation's call. I am an American airman. My mission is to fly, fight, and win. I am faithful to a proud heritage, a tradition of honor, and a legacy of valor. I am an American airman, guardian of freedom and justice, my nation's sword and shield, its sentry and avenger. I defend my country with my life. I am an American airman, wingman, leader, warrior. I will never leave an airman behind. I will never falter. I will not fail. This inspires me so much right now as we face these difficult challenges that are the reason for my not being able to come today. And I think of this airman's creed. I will never falter, and I will not fail. Thank you for honoring me with this prestigious award in the name of a great, great American hero, Medal of Honor recipient, Lance Sijan. I wish I could be there with you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Those values of honor, integrity, and love, these are stories that must be told. What can you do? You can talk about these kind of men. Thank you. I would like to award the 2019 Sijan Service Award to Gary Sinise at this point. General Rand, will you receive this for us?
Isn't this remarkable? We'll get a photo later. Yeah. How about it? Ladies and gentlemen, it's my real honor to introduce to you the 21st Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General David Gold.
So I was thinking, driving in this morning, talking to my wingman, Chief Wright. This sort of caps off almost the perfect week, if you think about it. So we started this week with Corona, or what we now call a Snow-Roma. And I will tell you that the focus this week is to look at both the challenges and opportunities that we have. I stand before you today proud as the 21st Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And I can look at you without blinking and tell you that if we go to war this year, we'll win. And we'll win with a force that was built by some folks named John Jumper and Buzz Mosley and Mike Ryan, such as the lead time nature of building an Air Force. This week was focused on ensuring that the 24th Chief of Staff, who was a one-star today, and I thought last night at dinner, could be the Commandant, currently at the Academy. Our job is to make sure that she can stand up in 2030 with the same confidence and say, if we go to war, we'll win. And that's the focus of Corona. And then yesterday, right here in this forum, we celebrated the legacy of General Benny Davis and talked about the Tuskegee Airmen and what he did, and honored him by renaming our airfield at the Academy the Davis Airfield. And what a moment to listen to General C.Q. Brown talk about what General Benny Davis has meant to him. And then today, to stand here and to listen to, and Janine, I will tell you, there's nothing I could say that will better capture what your brother means to all of us. And the questions that we all have, and for the cadets who are here, the questions that we all have, which ends with a look in the mirror, are we worthy? Are we worthy of the trust of the nation to do the nation's business? And could we stand up to adversity like your brother? And so thank you for that tribute. We often compare Gary Sinise to Bob Hope. I want to compare him actually to someone else in our history. A man named Gale Halverson, who I was fortunate to actually have dinner with on his 99th birthday. You see, Gale Halverson decided during the Berlin airlift that he would contribute just a little something to the starving children below as they flew in and out of Berlin by attaching Hershey candy bars to parachutes, waggling his wings, and then pitching these candy bombs out of his aircraft as he flew into Berlin. And it was a few years ago that a man came up to him and he said, Colonel Halverson, I want to thank you for saving my life. And Colonel Halverson said, well, tell me the story. He said, well, I was a young boy, I was an orphan, I'd lost my entire family during the war. And like the other street children, I was climbing through debris looking for food. And something hit me in the shoulder. And I looked over, and it was a candy bar under a parachute. He said, you saved my life that day. And he said, well, how does a candy bar save a life? And the gentleman looked at him, he said, you know, a young boy can live without food and water, sometimes for 40 some odd days. But you can't live without hope. You gave me hope on that day. And isn't that what this foundation is all about? And isn't that what the story of Lance Sijan is all about? And isn't that what we celebrate today with Gary Sinise? One who brings us hope every day. It's been the perfect week. And I'm going to apologize for heading out now to continue the perfect week as we welcome our new Secretary of the Air Force, Barbara Barrett, and swear her in about 30 minutes. And I can't think of one more thing that would make this more perfect to crush. So congratulations again, Gary, and thank you for what you mean for all of us. God bless. Thank you.
Well, the definition of a good coach is someone that can put his players in position to succeed. So I'm going to try to be a good coach right now. I know a lot of you in this room personally, and I know you're hungry and you need a cup of coffee. So why don't we adjourn to the back and run through the breakfast buffet line, and then we'll reconvene and figure out how we're going to beat Army. So, thank you this morning for the Cy John Service Award presentation. The other thing that I'd like to clarify, we have referred to Gary Sinise as the first community champion to receive the Cy John Service Award. Why we say that is in previous years, the recipients have been Academy graduates. But because of the wonderful work that the leadership of our Association of Graduates is taking on right now in the element of service, what they're doing at our away games. I'll give you an example. Marty Marcolongo, the CEO, Kathy McClain, the chairman. At Navy, they packed 200 sack lunches before the tailgate and dropped them off at the Homeless Resource Center. Marty, that's phenomenal. But as it affects celebration of service and the Lance B. Cy John Foundation, we are reevaluating how that award continues in the graduate community. And as you heard this morning, the message of the Lance B. Cy John Foundation and what Janine is trying to accomplish, we need to get it out to the broader community. And thus, there, as Janine pointed out, there is no better first recipient than Gary Sinise. So if you would, just because of the time compression to make sure that the Chief of Staff didn't get fired in the first week of the new Secretary's tenure, got him out the door on time, please take a moment and look at the program. The selection criteria is on that in that program. And I would tell you, Gary basically wrote it. I mean, we had developed it, and then when you start thinking about Gary Sinise, he is absolutely the perfect fit. The perfect fit. I would like to thank some people. Obviously, now I will miss somebody, but first of all, how about the support of the AOG, Marcella, and her team for the job they did this morning. The picnic basket, they heard the audible, they read the hot sign and pulled it off the picnic basket. I would like to ask you to take a moment here. The three objectives of celebration of service. First is to assess where you are in your personal journey with service, which we define as helping others to be better. What are you doing with your time and talent to improve, perhaps even shrinking the division that our country is currently experiencing? The other is to always show gratitude to what we call the frontline forces. We merge the military with the first responders because they truly are all on the front line. Make sure we continue to show our gratitude. And then we try to support organizations currently doing good work, primarily in the area of youth and support of the military and first responders. So take a moment, think about that. And I'm going to ask you to take one more moment. Believe it or not, one of the first year we awarded the Cy John Service Award to Jim Dolan, class of '76. He was the founder of Heroes on the Water. Take something simple. He loved fishing. He learned how to kayak. He combined and was now kayak fishing. And he launched Heroes on the Water. They now have 62 chapters across the country. They've probably serviced over 40,000 veterans. Just the tranquility of the water gives them peace. Unfortunately, Jim passed away. And if we just have a moment of silence in recognition of one of our Cy John Service Award winners, Jim Dolan. Thank you. He was an Air Force football player and Air Force rugby player, so probably time to transition to some football. And many of you play the game, know the life lessons that you learn. But we've got two men that are going to share some comments and insight right now. We're going to try to put you in the locker room. What's it like getting ready to play the other service academy? I got it. Army and Navy's got a 65-year head start. They play a game on a weekend where they're the only game on TV, right? Well, we need to establish our own identity. When somebody comes into Falcon Stadium, it's a celebration of service. Young men on both of those sidelines are going to serve their country. And there's nothing more celebratory than college football. You got music, you got cheerleaders, you got all this excitement, flybys. We need to grasp that And I've always wondered, why does Army always say beat Navy? Is it because they know they're not going to beat Air Force? Anyway, we're going to, you know, humble in victory, gracious in defeat. That's our motto. So I'm going to tell you the first speaker that I'm going to call up, I met 25 years ago. He was trying to figure out if he wanted to go into coaching. I happened to be the assistant AD at the time for Air Force, and I was connected to Nate, and you recognized immediately he's got it. You can't coach it, you can't teach it. He has it. And he's a tremendous leader, a tremendous thinker. If you had the opportunity to watch him play in the mid-'80s, he was a heck of a competitor. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming West Point quarterback, 1985, Nate Sasserman.
I can't help but just think I've just landed in an L-shaped ambush here today. Is there anybody in the house rooting for Army other than Colleen and myself? All right, I'm just checking. I just kind of want to get a feel for the environment here. It's a great day. It's a great day for the Army Air Force Classic. It's exciting to be here. I did not realize that Chad Hennings and I were on the field at the same time in 1984 at Mikey Stadium. It was the first ever night game. I think both teams were ranked in the top 25. They had to bring in the lights. ESPN, I think, was that first time. Just an exciting night. Fortunately, you were backup tight end. So I didn't have to see him on that other side that day because he looks like he could play right now. Okay. I was on the sidelines of the LSU Auburn game last weekend, and they're going like, "Hey, get closer. You want to get closer to the field and see?" And I go, "No, I don't need to go anywhere near those guys. They're huge. I've taken plenty of blows to the head as a wishbone quarterback. I'm super honored to be here. Thank you, Russ, for the invitation. General Rand, Home Field Advantage, Janine Syjon, the Syjon Foundation, Gary Sinise and the Sinise Foundation, and all the others who have made this fine event possible. It's been first class, starting with what we did last night, and it just warms my heart. And when Russ invited me to speak, I looked at Colleen, I said, I think we're going to need to go to Nordstrom Rack and look for a blue coat. because I don't have blue in my wardrobe anywhere. So I hope you can appreciate the lengths I've gone to kind of fit in and respect the organization and the event. I do want to say this. The Syjon documentary last night, with General Rand's comments about freedom is not free, they are so embedded in my heart, and you have to go see this documentary that Janine put together on her brother and all the other Air Force warriors. And so let's just thank her again for that. 10 years in the making, goes beyond a labor of love. All right, just real quickly, I want to practice one clap, okay? When I say one clap, I need everybody to give me one clap. One clap. Good. Anybody serve or serving in the Coast Guard or were in the Coast Guard before, stand up. Do we have anybody in the Coast Guard? Anybody in the Navy? One clap for the Navy. Keep standing. Keep standing. I want to see that. Good. Marines. All right, one clap for the Marines. Air Force, stand up if you're in the Air Force. All right, let's go. 2 claps for the Air Force. Okay, where's my Army guys? All right, 3 claps for the Army. All right, thank you. Take your seats. Seriously, I want to thank everyone for their service. Freedom is not free. And I'll get into it in a second, but I can't command a 1,200-person soldier combined arms battalion in the middle of the Sunni Triangle in 2003 and 2004. And the cost, the sacrifice of what we saw last night, that is the reason we can come here today and go over there and root for our teams and appreciate the freedoms that we have. In January 1981, Coach Ken Hatfield and Coach Fisher DeBerry were in my living room in Portland, Oregon, recruiting me for the United States Air Force Academy. And it really did alter the course of my life. And I want to talk about leadership and coaching just for a second. Because I was only being recruited by West Coast schools. And I think Marty Louthan had come from Eugene, and so there was that Oregon connection. But over time, as time went on, the West Point picked me up as a potential recruit. And really, if it didn't start with that visit from Ken Hatfield and Fisher DeBerry, I don't get on West Point's list and, you know, on their scope to be recruited. And I don't go there and then go on into a military career. And at the time, and I still, this is from an Army guy now with a blue coat, you know, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, I feel like Air Force football set the standard. It set the standard for Service Academy football. And when we were talking to, you know, Chad here, you beat Notre Dame, was it 4 years in a row? Yeah. 4 years in a row, are you kidding me? Played Notre Dame in 1983 in the Meadowlands. There was probably 99% of the fans were Notre Dame fans. We lost 48-0. Okay, I love anybody playing Notre Dame who can beat them. It's my favorite team. It's my favorite team every week. Just saying. Okay? And what Coach DeBerry did, and what the Air Force football program did, is they just raised it to a really high standard. And that's leadership, and that's coaching, and that's culture. And you were talking about, you know, the Cy John Award winner, I think, or the fellow who just passed away, Coach Charlie Taff, my quarterback's coach, and the offensive coordinator for the 1984 team, passed away this week from cancer. The winningest football coach, head football coach at the Citadel. And you know what? Just a great leader and mentor and coach in my life. And we just need to give those guys a hand for all the work that they do, for those service academies. I always said I learned way more about leadership up at Michie Stadium than I ever did down on the plane in drill or in the classroom. I only got to play in 4 Army Air Force Classics. It's funny how you forget about the first 3 because you just lost all those 3. I only remember 1. And it was the last one, the senior year, and I mentioned that. You know what was funny about that game, too, is we had a safety on the first play of the game. So it was 2-0 Army, but we were losing at half 12-5, and we came back and won that night 24-12. People always talk about, like, hey, you beat Navy, beat Navy, beat Navy, but I'm going to tell you, because the standard was so high, that win against Air Force, which was, I think, the first one in quite a while, means as much or more as the win later in the year against Navy. Russ wanted me to talk a little bit about the emotions involved in the game like today. I just want to say it's really, really, really hard to win at Air Force for a lot of different reasons and a lot of different factors. And I know the Army football coaches over the years have like brought the teams out like a week ahead. Some would bring them like 48 hours. I know one coach brought them like the night before, you know, doing all that out, you know, working through all that altitude. It is hard to win at Air Force. This is not an easy place to play. And I did a little research last night. So we played out here 25 times. Guess how many times Army has won out here in those 25 times? 1967, 1977, 2005, 2017. It is really hard to win out here for a lot of reasons. And we were close in 81, but it didn't go. Everything has to go perfect today for us to win. Because there's like, I always felt that there's like a touchdown, or maybe even 10 points. It's already 10-0. Haven't even got out of the locker room and I'm down 10-0. I mean, come on, man. Celebration and service, we battle against each other on the field in football and athletics, but in times of war, it melts away. As a Combined Arms Battalion commander leading in the Sunni Triangle, 1,200 soldiers, this is when the services truly work together, when we're up against it. And as a commander, I just believe, my philosophy was crush the ant with a sledgehammer. Okay? That's kind of the way I rolled. So I was probably one of the first battalion commanders calling for airstrikes immediately upon any positions, any time of firing on our forces. And so just one more story, and I'll be off in a second. And so we do the first one, and I'm like, this is the first one at F-16. We got like, there's gonna be 2 of them. There's 4 2,000-pound bombs. Everything's a go. And I'm kind of danger close. I'm within a kilometer, maybe a little closer. And the LNO goes, okay, sir, we're good. We can go back to the base. I go, oh no. I've waited my entire life to see this time on target deal. We're staying right here. If you want to recheck the coordinates, recheck the coordinates. We're not going anywhere. And I'm telling you, you have not lived. The sound of freedom is when F-16s roll in with 4-2. And the earth kind of shakes, and everything's just eviscerated. That's the sound of freedom. And that's, like I was thinking about this last night too. The guys I want, the men and women I want flying those things are the ones that I'm playing against today or in other athletic events. Because they know what it is for that teamwork to help us out. In closing, I watched the Cy John documentary last night. This is what I felt. I just felt tremendous humility and gratitude. Watching the absolute incredible sacrifice of Captain Lance Cy John, and then the other stories from those other pilots that were captured behind enemy lines. As a commander who's had soldiers killed in action and dozens wounded in action, the sacrifice is just so great. Unless you're there and you see it, it's hard to embody it. I read a book recently by Mark Bowden, Way 1968. Every page, I just got it just was more humbling and more gracious just reading that. And I felt that same way last night. Every minute of that documentary I was just more, the humility that came through to me. And the piece to me is the sacrifice is so great. So enjoy the game today. Root loudly for your team, but know that we can only enjoy today because of the tremendous courage, sacrifice, and selfless service of so many before us. Freedom is not free, sir. Service never ends. See you on the high ground. God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you, Nate. A few more thank yous before we turn it over to number 87. You see the original painting to my left. It was presented to, it's obviously for Gary, but it was presented to General Rand last night. Incredible piece of art. There will be a limited edition of this piece of art. We'll get word out to you when that starts to happen. Obviously, Gary was not here last night to sign. There'll be signing prints, but I'd like to introduce the artist who did this incredible piece, Steve Hare and his wife, Lisa. Please stand up. I'd also like to thank the members of the Home Field Advantage team, Doug May, Mike Hesterman, Justin jumping in with the video, and Sherm. How about a hand for the Home Field Advantage? And there's 3 ladies that I need to thank because without them, this does not happen. The first is my partner in life, my wife, who decided that we should take a chance
and make celebration of service a reality, my wife, Mary Laney. I don't have the word or words to describe this next woman as what she means to Mary and me. We've used sister, seems inadequate. She's definitely part of our family. She lost a son in the line of duty while he was on the Dallas Police Department. She is an Air Force spouse. Her husband, Phil Metzler, was a 2-star general upon his retirement. Very, very special lady to us, Pat Metzler. And we talk about God incidents in our family, right? Things happen and you wonder how and why. So visualize the last time Air Force played in Notre Dame Stadium. 80,000 seats, probably a lot. And as it turned out, this young lady sat next to a good friend of mine, Larry Dozier. And I walked into Larry's office the following Monday. We had the usual conversation about the game. And he goes, I met Lance Sijon's sister. You've got to meet her. And the next thing I know, I'm on a squawk box meeting Janine. We continue to communicate, but truly without her taking a leap of faith that we would properly honor Lance's legacy and having the Sijon Service Award be a part of Celebration of Service, we're not here this morning. Another round of applause for Janine Sijon. I know I'm forgetting somebody. I apologize because there's so many of you that have helped make this a reality. It's been an unbelievable weekend. I promise you I will not do my Fisher DeBerry impersonation. He sends his best. He wants to be here, but he too is dealing with some family issues and just could not break away. But Coach DeBerry means so much to so many of us in this room. Let's give Fisher a hand. The one piece of advice that Fisher did give to me that you all will appreciate is that he reminded me that I'm a miracle comedian. It'll be a miracle if I say anything funny, and that just keeps my comments brief. I highlight the fact that Fisher is not here because he was scheduled to speak on behalf of the Air Force. I called in a good friend and said, hey, I know you're a football guy, but did you play any baseball? Because I need a pinch hitter. And so he, on very, very short notice, in fact, we talked about it last night, we do in fact have our pinch hitter. To Air Force fans, he truly doesn't need an introduction. I do want to say he was a great, great, great player. Outland Trophy winner, 3-time Super Bowl champion. And we hear this sometimes where he says, oh, he's a much better man than he was a player, and I think it's cliche. In the case of Chad Hennings, it is not. He is a much greater man than he was a player, and he was a great player. Ladies and gentlemen, Chad Hennings.
Flexibility to keep air power. That was very well done. Well done. It is an honor for me to come off the bench and represent Coach DeBerry, a man who was a huge mentor for me, and to be a part of an event that celebrates the Sijon Foundation, the Sinise Foundation, and Home Field Advantage. And for those of you that weren't there last night seeing Lance's documentary, the Sijon documentary, I encourage you, Janine, I don't know how we can get that out, but that is a must-see. I mean, it's a must-see. I think it should be like mandatory viewing for the whole cadet wing to see that part of basic training. I really for me, what hit home was a lot of the stories. That's how we pass on traditions, the stories, to get to know somebody. It's not, leadership is not taught in an academic setting where it's on a whiteboard. This is commitment, this is humility. It's taught through stories. The transformational component, as we all know, Nate, right, is by example. And for me last night, the quote that hit me between the eyes was the quote by G.K. Chesterton that you quoted, and I'll paraphrase. It's the soldier. It's not about the enemy, the hate for the enemy in front of him. It's for the love of those behind him, why he does what he does. And that's why we're here to celebrate service. And Russ, I appreciate so much what you're doing together, because I think to encourage service, to encourage volunteerism, there is nothing better that pulls people together, that can unite people, is that aspect of being a part of something greater than self. Something that encourages to go beyond self, that unites people. And that was surely my experience in the Air Force, at the Air Force Academy, in professional athletics, active duty Air Force, in corporate America today, as well as my philanthropic pursuits. When it's not about me, and it's about the we, it unites us. So thank you so much, Russ, for what you're doing here and you continue to do, and amen, brother. And I know Coach DeBerry would say the same thing.
He'd say it differently.
He'd say it differently. How about now there's a turtle on a fence post? No, Quick story about Coach DeBerry. But I was at his, when he was inducted in the College Hall of Fame, he was the last person to present. And this, for those of you who have ever attended this event in New York, it is a long, long drawn out event. People were half asleep. I got to know if you were there at that. Do you remember? Everybody's like, dozing off, and Coach DeBerry gets up there and just ignites the room. And we had people jump up and just shake. Oh my gosh! Hey, Mike! But it was great. Leadership. As we were talking earlier, I think I learned more about leadership through my mentors. And I've never had the opportunity to do this publicly in the 30 plus years since I graduated from this prestigious institution of higher learning. Than to acknowledge two mentors that are here today for me. My sponsor when I was at the Air Force Academy, he was here, Brigadier General retired, Air Force Brigadier General retired, Robert Earthquake Titus. I learned more about the philosophical aspects of leadership, fortunately, unfortunately, over a few adult beverages at his house with Robin Olds and several of his contemporaries about what it meant to lead men both in training as well as in combat. And sir, thank you very much for the virtues that you helped instill in me. Thank you for that. And my other mentor, gentleman sitting right up front here, Mike Gould. For those of you who don't know, Mike was essentially responsible, had two huge impacts on my life. One, he was the recruiting coordinator for the state of Iowa where I was recruited. Nobody wanted to look at me, but he was a guy that my high school coach came out here, delivered some film for me, and he said, hey, Coach DeBerry, we need to take a look at this kid. That's how I got to the Air Force Academy. And then, as you can tell, I'm a little physically challenged by height and weight to be able to fly. Mike, again, 4 years later, was instrumental in me getting a waiver for my height and weight to be able to fly. So, ladies and gentlemen, please acknowledge my friend. Go Warthogs, that's it. Service and leadership. Service and leadership. What a rivalry. What a rivalry Service Academy rivalries are. I mean, I don't think there's anything like it in the history of sport. You know, one of the things that I heard a player actually, it's probably been said before, but it was a Naval Academy graduate, he was a former Navy SEAL, Clint Bruce, had said one time during an interview, he said, what makes this game so special? And he says, both the young men on both sides of the field raise their hands to take an oath of service, to give their lives willingly to support all those fans that are watching on TV as well as in the stands. That's what makes this game so special. And I think for me, a story that highlights why this game is so special, I love telling this story. The story told about two young men, two brothers, that were playing football in a park in Washington, D.C. area. As these two young men were tossing the pigskin back and forth, a large Rottweiler jumps out of the bushes and begins to maul on the young men. Well, his brother was a quick thinker, ran up to a nearby fence, takes a piece of wood off the fence, walks up to that dog, slaps that dog in the rear, the dog runs back off into the bushes. Well, a reporter from DC happened to be there, saw the whole thing, went up to the young man, took his little notebook out, his pencil, and he said, son, that was the most awesome display of heroism and courage I've ever seen. He began to write a headline for the next day's paper. He said, Army football player. My whole goal in life was to beat him in everything. He beat me like a drum many times. And I can remember and being so close in age, we competed against and with one another. In football, he was the quarterback on the team, I was the tight end. You know, he'd sit there and, okay, run this route. You know, he'd just sit there and throw balls, and I'd have to run these 10, 15-yard routes. I got in shape. But there was that one time, I was a sophomore, he was a senior in high school. Whatever reason, what brothers do, we got off and started to get into a little fisticuffs. This was the first time that I got the better of him, and I bloodied his nose, and from then on, we were as close as That's what Service Academy football is all about. The different entities where we get out there on the fields of friendly strife, where they're going to battle, they're going to get after it. But here's the thing about, and I agree with you, for me, football is the greatest leadership laboratory that there is. I think of no other aspect of where you truly can have that transformational component to put into practice what it means to be a leader. And I think I learned more about being a leader on the football field here at Falcon Stadium that I've been able to transfer to both playing professionally for the Cowboys and then out in the business world, and et cetera. Because the game today, no matter who wins, and again, it doesn't matter who the better team is. I mean, who on paper looks better. Falcons are 16.5-point favorites. Throw that out the window. It doesn't matter. It's going to be it's going to be a war out there. It's going to be a battle. But here's the thing. Those young men have learned through football what it means. I mean, again, the success of whoever's going to win today, the victory is not going to be played here today. The victory has already been played by the practices that you've had working up to that. It's the time in the weight room. It's the time of evaluating film. It's the time where you're working on technique. It's being able to communicate with your brother that's along the side, playing next to you. For me, that's what I learned about, and those skill sets were transferred then onto active duty. Because when I was in the weight room getting after it, evaluating film, with John Steed, my partner in crime on the defensive line, we developed our own communication back and forth of how to speak depending upon what the offense was going to do to us. That same skill set I transferred over to when I was flying jets, the A-10. We would practice on range, dropping bombs. We would roll in with that 30mm Gatling gun, or we'd evaluate film of how we did on the range, how we could improve, studying our enemy on film, what assets he could throw at that could hurt us. It all transferred to life. And it made me a better officer because I had practical application of what I was able to do in Falcon Stadium. So today, it matters not, who the better team, who wins, who loses, in the grand scheme of things. We're going to bloody each other's nose, but after that, we're brothers. And when somebody comes against brothers from the outside, you know what happens. Katie bar the door, all hell's going to break loose. And I agree with General Goldfein, no matter who it is, we're going to kick ass and take names. So go Air Force, go Army, I'll be gracious in that. I'm just praying for a good game, and I'm glad I'm not in Texas where it's 90 degrees and I'm up here with a little snow, a little sunshine. God bless Colorado too, amen? Thank you very much.
Not bad for a pinch hitter, huh? All right. I had mentioned earlier that just things are becoming clear to me that it's Service, Cy-John, and Sinise. And when Gary, everything was tracking, he was going to be here. We had air set up for him. Everything was good. We obviously, they threw a different defense at us. And now it's our turn. Gary's been here for us. Now we need to be here for him. Okay, I'd like for the members of the Gary Sinise Foundation team stand up and be recognized for the support that they give. Okay, we've heard from an Army officer, we've heard from an Air Force officer, and now we're going to take direction from a Marine enlisted. So we're challenged here, but we talked about this, and I think we can pull it off. We want, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to cheer for Gary, okay? But we're on time, probably ahead of schedule as far as getting down to the tailgate and getting ready for the game. We encourage you, with the weather being like it is, take a stroll down to the Southeast Asia Memorial Pavilion and go see the bronze of Lance. It is an incredible, incredible piece of art. We're going to ask Janine and General Rand to go down there for some photos. But please take your time. Like I said, I think we're ahead of schedule. All right, the last official act, two things. One, we'll be back here in October. This is not a one-time rodeo, right? We're going to do this again Navy weekend in 2020, first weekend in October. Now, if everybody would stand up, and we are going to say, thank you, Gary, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Gary. How about it? Thank you so much. Enjoy the game. Cheer loudly for your team. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
You get it?
Yeah, the